instrument is the prototype of the Tacoma Papoose and is actually the very first Tacoma offset sound hole guitar. This came out before the full-size Tacoma Chief offset hole guitar. Tacoma was a company set up by a Korean company, Youngchang, that had a sawmill in Tacoma, Washington. The sawmill was set up to supply lumber for their operations because they were not harvesting wood in any significant quantity in Korea. Korea is highly populated, and what few forests they have over there and in Japan are national treasures. They don't want to cut them all down because they'd go through, if they were using their forests for wood for their own industry, they'd have no forest left within a couple of years. They just don't have enough wood over there, and they weren't getting much wood out of Russia, which today they can, but back then they didn't. But at any rate, they decided that it would be interesting to set up a guitar company next to the sawmill. What they had in mind was producing instruments not with a Tacoma brand or a Youngchang brand, but simply doing their standard business model, which was to be what they call an OEM manufacturer, original equipment manufacturer. In other words, making things as a ghost manufacturer with whatever brand name purchasers wanted on it. There's today numerous companies in Korea, Japan, Indonesia, China will make many different brand names in the same factory and none that have their own name on them. But I pointed out to them that that was a formula that might well not work, that it would cost more in the USA to make things than it would in Asia, and that ultimately, at the time that these instruments were contemplated, it was a very, very competitive market where numerous American manufacturers that had sidelines of imports would switch manufacturers of their imports frequently. And the import companies often had to make them at very low margins, and if somebody else came in and outbid them by $1 or $2, the American distributor would switch manufacturers. So I persuaded them to try something new. And that was a Tacoma brand instrument with the offset sound hole. And I said, let's hit them where they ain't. We'll start out by designing a little mini guitar tuned 5 frets higher than standard, something that nobody else has, and that could actually work very well in ensemble groups. Just as a viola and a violin has different voices, I envisioned doing different size guitars. I had in mind the Papoose as a tenor-voiced instrument, a standard size guitar, and also baritone guitars and basses, which eventually we did all of those. But this is the very first one. It doesn't even have a Tacoma name on it anywhere. And this was made in very early 1990s. It has a 19-inch scale. The neck width at the nut is 1 7/8 inches wide. Now that's wider than most steel string guitars, but with a 19-inch short scale, equivalent effectively to a standard guitar capoed at the 5th fret so far as scale length. This width is also very much close to the width of a neck at the 5th fret. Necks don't stay uniform in width. They are narrower at the nut and wider at the string spacing at the bridge. Therefore, they taper. To be comfortable to play, A short scale guitar with the frets closer together needs to be wider. The anatomy of the human hand does not change if you get a small guitar. If you build a small guitar in proportion the same as a big guitar, the neck will be too narrow for comfort for the human hand. This works. The other thing is little instruments, just like mandolins are little and they're loud, violins are little and they're loud, they project. A little guitar can be just as loud as a big guitar. This has 15 frets clear of the body. Here's the 12th fret, so 12, 13, 14, 15. You got lots of frets to work with. If you were to take a standard size guitar and capo it at the 5th fret, on most guitars you'd have only that much to work with. And if you capoed it up any further, you'd be plumb out of luck. You wouldn't have anything to work with. So this gives you a tone that's different from a standard full-size guitar capoed at the 5th fret. It's a proper balance of air chamber size to pitch. It uses standard weight strings. Actually, what we found is tuning up 5 frets, extra light acoustics work perfectly. So you can use regular light gauge, but they really work very well with extra light. And extra light acoustics by electric guitar standards are still plenty heavy. This is a cedar top, mahogany back, sides, and neck, bolt-on neck with the 2 bolts going into metal threaded bushings in the neck, truss running the full length of the neck, which goes all the way to the end of the fingerboard. You can reset a neck in a matter of minutes. It's not fancy. It's a simple oil rubbed finish. So it's not a regular spray lacquer, but it's a very thin finish. They sound very responsive. They're very playable all over. And for a while, they were being endorsed by a wide variety of artists, from Vince Gill and Ricky Skaggs to, just all sorts of folks. And there are still a fair number of them being used in Nashville recording studios now. But unfortunately, after Fender acquired Tacoma, they eventually closed the company down. So this is another design that's still lurking out there. It's an interesting and good quality instrument, but not currently in production.